Most baby boomers are now ending up homeless. Most baby boomers are now ending up homeless. So the statistics are there, and boomers are rapidly ending up homeless. Watch the video to fully understand the implications of this, why boomers are rapidly ending up homeless, and how this is going to affect not only them, but the society going forward. And now let's just go ahead and jump right into the video.
Baby boomers grew up in the slow growth, high inflation economy of the 1970s and the early 1980s, so you'd think they'd be more thoughtful when the 2008 financial crisis threatened their own children. When the Great Recession hit, the boomers had become America's policymakers, and corporate leaders consistently made decisions that supported their own interests at the expense of younger Americans.
And just to be clear, today's video comes from Business Insights. Their channel will be linked to the description. It's in the description, so you can go check them out and support them. Now back to the show.
In this video, we will look at how boomers ended up bankrupting the youth. People born between 1946 and 1964 are considered baby boomers, or boomers in short. They were raised after the war and hence have no true experience with trauma, the Great Depression, or any form of adversity. More importantly, they never experienced the social unity that arose during the war and contributed to the New Deal. However, the white middle-class boomers represent all of the terrible traits and behaviors that have defined this generation. They gained a majority of the electorate in the early 1980s, and by January 1995, they had fully entrenched their authority in Washington.
Let me just take a step back right here. This is not exclusively a white person problem. This is all of the boomers entirely. It is a generation of bad apples. While the boomer generation is predominantly white, let's make it very, very clear. This is not limited by ethnicity. It's not limited by race. It is a bad generation of very bad apples. Now let's just go ahead and jump right back in.
Since then, they've essentially been in command. Generational experts and media sources ranging from Vox to The Guardian have criticized the generation for its involvement in bankrupting the prosperous economy that they inherited, leaving millennials to pick up the pieces. Millennials, now the largest generation, have faced an affordability issue since they emerged from the Great Recession into a terrible job market, trying to accumulate wealth while facing skyrocketing living costs and significant college debt. They were still struggling with the after effects a dozen years later when the coronavirus recession and an unprecedented housing crisis hit. Neil Howe, the economist, historian, and demographer who invented the term millennial, previously stated that boomers are unwilling to pay for institutional upkeep, preferring to spend money on things that improve people's lives. He links this to their coming-of-age experience, in which their parents, the GI generation, were concerned with establishing solid institutions and looking ahead. Boomers took that for granted and created a live-for-today attitude, according to him. They profited financially from this mentality. According to the report, boomers saw a gain in asset value as a result of low interest rates and higher property prices. They did not have to spend as much for college as millennials, and they will not have to pay for the environmental damage caused by the carbon-emitting corporations in which they have invested. According to author Jill Filipovich's book, OK Boomer, Let's Talk, boomers caused an economic crisis that would make millennials, the first generation, worse off than their parents. The fact that boomers have had an enormous political, cultural, and economic power for several decades has kept millennials from recognizing the economic remedies they require. Jill thinks millennials need boomers to share their wisdom and experience while allowing the younger generation to participate in decision-making processes. Unless millennials are at the table, we're really not going to see the issues that are most important to us addressed. Filipovich said, "You need people who are actually going to live in the future, who have a stake in the future at the decision-making table." Because millennials had just recently entered the workforce, they did not have significant savings or homes that had lost value during the financial crisis.
You know what's really amazing about this assessment is the fact that once again, Gen X is left out of the conversation. So I'm a Zennial, and Zennials are people born between 1977 and 1983. So we're people who are born in the Gen X era, and as they transition to the millennials. And let me just make this very clear. I'm beginning to really feel this and get a little, well, I don't really care. Gen X always gets left out. How the hell is it that they're talking about millennials need a seat at the table and they just like forget about 60 million Gen Xers as if they don't exist? Like, you do know, like, there are Gen Xers right now that are I'm a Zennial, so basically I'm between those two generations. I'm 41, and the and then Gen Xers who were born in 1980, those guys are like 43. So why would you leave people out of the conversation when a lot of the generation is still in their 40s? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Gen X always gets forgotten. It's a 60 million people. How do you forget 60 million people? I don't know, guys. I really, really don't know what's going on here. To be very honest, a lot of millennials don't have common sense. All right. And a lot of this woke culture, as much as millennials like try to act like they're not a part of it, a lot of this woke garbage started with the millennials. Going back to 2020, when we had that very interesting, colorful summer of people out in the streets with black hoodies, those were not predominantly Gen Zers. Those were predominantly millennials. Okay? Most of those people out there were millennials, and you even had some boomers out there. I'm not saying you didn't have Gen Xers out there as well. But the black hoodie people were predominantly millennials tearing down society. So I don't know who the hell these people think that they are, acting like they need a special seat, that they are the table. Like, bro, what is going on? I really don't know. And don't try to claim me. I don't, but like Gen X has warned millennials very, very long ago. Like Gen X has told millennials, and they don't want to listen, that if they go to war, if they think that and it's not just millennials, it's Gen Z. They've warned Gen Z, but younger millennials who are of almost Gen Zers are in that range. They feel strong and powerful. Gen Z was warned, and younger millennials need to understand this. If a generational war truly breaks out, older millennials and Zennials are going to side with Gen X, and Gen X has warned them of this, and they don't comprehend this. Okay, let's just be very, very clear. Millennials are not going to fix this mess. A lot of them are too broke, too screwed up in the head, and I'm just. They don't have that resilience. They do not have that resilience. A lot of them are just hanging on, hanging on, hanging on. And I'm just being very, very serious about that. I posted a poll about this, a very interesting poll, where I asked who were the best parents, who were the best parents, and it was a very strange poll. In the video you're watching, the guy, he basically talks about the fact that the boomers, they became a large political generation. Guys, I want you to look at this poll. So I posted this 3 days ago at the time of recording this video. Who were the best parents? And I want you guys to see the results. Notice what these people are saying. The baby boomers are 26%. So 46% said I don't know / I don't care. I guarantee you, this is going to be a lot of Gen Xers who just don't give a damn. Millennials were 4%. Gen X was strangely 23%, and baby boomers 26%. So the most narcissistic group of people, highly and widely panned by society, are voted the best parents. This is very, very strange. Even if you go to the comments, Go says Gen X 100%. The baby boomers were way too harsh on Gen X raising them. Gen X learned to be more compassionate when raising their children. For example, setting an example their parents would not do for them, but still uphold the values and life lessons to teach their children. That, plus having to deal with a challenging environment with the introduction of technology and social media, in which they themselves had to also learn of the dangers and adapt their approach. Millennials didn't take the lessons of Gen X to heart and allowed social media and technology to influence their minds, becoming selfish and unwilling to teach their kids discipline. If you look at Gen Alpha, the children of the millennials, they are terrible. Gen X had a good balance of care and discipline that the baby boomers and millennials lack. All right, guys, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So I don't know what the living hell anyone's saying. The boomers, VMAX says none of these. Dead serious. Boomers obviously had it the best, but they got too comfortable, fat and soft, while the elites continued to making moves on the chessboard. Now look where we are. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy, but there's some interesting things there. The boomers are very responsible for this. They are very, very responsible. These were not very nice people. People have to understand the boomers are nasty, nasty people. And guys, they had a George Carlin talked about them. He talked about how the boomers were, how they behaved in society. He said, listen, this is how the boomers are. They're not the nicest of people. There's some really, really gnarly people, and you have to understand that. You have to understand who the boomers were. These are I'm telling you guys, the boomers did so much bad in society. I've said it already that they took everything. They took everything from us, and and they basically scraped. They basically scraped the. Trying to find the best way of putting it. They basically scraped. They basically scraped the pot clean. All right, so they cleaned the bone of any meat, and then after they cleaned the bone, of any meat, they sucked the marrow dry, and then after they sucked the marrow dry, they then came back for the bone. There we go. All right, and now they want to ground up the bone into dust. This is how the boomers are. This is how they've always been. They've always been like this. They've never been nice people. Tell you again, the boomers, the baby boomers, have never been nice people. They've always been very narcissistic, very, very me, 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 me. It all belongs to me. They were cheap. They were desperate. Guys, they gave very little to their kids because they were afraid of not having enough for themselves. That's how the boomers are. Okay? And they haven't changed. They basically focus entirely on the right now. George Carlin warned us about this group of people years ago. I realized that a big reason why I wanted to go into medicine, I never ended. Well, I have an undergraduate in health science and other stuff. So in that respect, I did go in that direction. I did work on a PhD in public health, but a doctorate in public health. But I realized a lot of the reasons why I probably wanted to go into medicine was probably because of my pediatrician when I was growing up, because I respected him so much. He was a member of the silent generation, and my mother, for example, absolutely hated him being a baby boomer because he used to tell me about society, about the way the world worked. And, basically, he opened my mind up to a lot of ideas. My mother, of course, like any other baby boomer, wanted to completely control me and suppress every independent thought that I would have. And one of the things he said was he basically told me not to be like the baby boomers. All right. He told me, and for a lot of us, we grew up learning that you have to limit television time. The boomers were way too strict on us. We basically had nothing at all. All right. Even TV was already limited. But I remember my pediatrician said, listen, when you turn 18, get away from. He actually told me that when I turned 18 to get away from my mother because he knew people like her, and if I stayed around her beyond that period of time, she would end up ruining my life. This is something a member of the silent generation told me. Told me to get the hell away from her when I turned 18. 18, okay? He could see something coming, guys. He basically could see where the direction and trajectory of my life, where it would be heading. All right? Because the baby boomers, they were mentally abusive people. And he said that, and he was referring to the baby boomers. He said, don't watch television. And I'm like, and as a kid, as a 13-year-old, TV is pretty much all you have. I mean, what are you supposed to do? And I read a lot of books. I was a big reader when I could, because my parents were very nasty people. My father would go through my bag, and for example, there was a book that we were assigned reading once. This is how horrible my parents were. My parents were pieces of shit. And he went through my backpack and he took out a book that we were assigned reading, and the book mentioned the word, a deletion. It just barely mentioned the word abortion in there. And it was a young literature book. And he went down to my school, went to my English teacher, and berated my English teacher, who was a very nice lady. And her husband, unfortunately, also worked at the school. Her husband was this really huge, buff guy. He looked like a cop. Her husband was really nice to me, really kind, and I had a hard time, and I had a hard time in middle school, really, really hard time in middle school, and those were two of the only people that were nice to me, specifically her husband. Both were teachers, but my father saw a book. This is how horrible the boomers were, and he goes down to the school and he screams and hollers at the teacher. Now, keep in mind, my father was a cop. So these people, they have something inside of them that they can do whatever they want to you. And of course, he would always walk around armed, and he felt big and bad, and his balls were bigger than everyone else. Okay? This is the baby boomers, guys. They could delete as many people. I heard stories of the things that my father and his buddies used to do as police officers. Okay? Many of them are no longer even in this world because of the evils they did. This is the boomers, guys. This is the boomers. They were these bad apples, these bad apples, y'all. So he goes down to the school, screams in this poor woman's face over a guys. There was nothing in there. It was just basically, so it was like a short, like one tiny mention of a girl who basically had premarital relationships with a boy, and she ended up getting in a ended up deleting, the control law deleting the gestation. Again, it was not the largest part of the book. It was a tiny mention within the book. It was less than a page. Okay, it was a couple of sentences, and he went and did this, and she felt so humiliated. This poor lady, and as a kid, I'm trying to tell her I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about this, and I had no power. This is the same guy who used to just punch me in the face. And like I said, if he didn't use it, it would be better if he used his knuckles, but he would use other parts of his fingers because he wanted to of it so that it would really hurt. He almost split my skull open. So after this happened, the teacher basically she told me like she had to be very careful, and she basically would have to avoid me. In fact, I think I got transferred out of her class. My English teacher, okay? And she basically told me like she's gonna have to stay away from me because my father's dangerous. And then her husband, he would never speak to me again. This was a big, giant looking dude. I'm just telling y'all, this guy was huge, huge. Like, I mean, he had massive arms. He had to have been in his early 30s. This guy looked like a military guy or a cop. I'm telling you, maybe he had been a cop before. This was a humongous guy, just an insanely huge guy. Like, you're not gonna take him. He was scared to death of my father. He would never speak to me again. He would avoid me in the halls. Guys, I want you guys to understand. This is the baby boomers. That's who these people are. So it's no wonder, and now they're ending up homeless because they lived these lives where they were frivolous with money. They were desperate for every single nickel, penny, and nickel and dime. The poll I showed you guys earlier just shows you how they can manipulate statistics. All right, they rush every poll that pops out. They flood the polls with votes to tilt the polls in their favors. That's how these people operate. That pediatrician I told you about, he told me when it comes to television, stay away from television because it'll make you fat, lazy, and stupid. And you don't want to be fat, lazy, and stupid now, do you? And he was referring to the boomers. All right? You don't want to be like the boomers now, do you, son? No, 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 sir, I don't. All right. You leave it alone. That actually messed up my relationship with television because even when I owned one, I was afraid to I was afraid to watch it because of what he put in my head. But that's just how things were back then. And I was fortunate. I was absolutely fortunate that I had people like him in my life that inspired me to work hard and to understand. One, told me who the boomers were very early on, and also inspired me to work hard in life and not expect handouts or anything from anyone because life was going to be hard. Life was not going to be easy, and I was not going to get the same luxuries as the baby boomers did. So I'm very fortunate for the silent generation and the greatest generation. I was heavily raised by silent generation and great generation people. And I am so lucky for those old people because In some ways, Gen X is fortunate because Gen X is fortunate in some ways because many of them also were raised by their grandparents, or they had contact with silent generation and greatest generation people. You know, I mean, so that was a very, very important thing for me. And even the love that I did not get at home from my parents because they were very cold, evil, and cruel people, I still had solid generation and greatest generation teachers who did look out for me and that were kind for me and made opportunities for me. You know, took me to make I know it sounds crazy, during the summers, took me to McDonald's and taught me how technology worked and gave me and taught me about responsibility, allowed me to learn how to use the Dewey Decimal System, work at a library, and learn how to structure books and how to work with people. I was very, very fortunate for those old people. I was really, really fortunate. Even when I was having a hard time at home, I still had the silent generation ladies and greatest generation old ladies that would comfort me. So I'm very, very fortunate for those very, very old people. I did grow up with those old people, and I'm so grateful for them because a lot of people don't have them, didn't have them. They were nothing. I'll tell you right now, they were nothing. They were very, very different. There were some miserable ones. I'm not going to say they were all wonderful, but compared to the baby boomers, they were completely different. Greatest generation people were interesting. They could be a mixed bag. Some of them could be really miserable, but then also they could have different sides to them. They grew up the greatest generation people, a lot of them grew up during very hard times because they came of age during the Great Depression. So they remember those hard times. And as a result of that, that's kind of where like my work ethic kind of, I guess it does come kind of from the greatest, a lot of it is greatest generation. Like, you can watch like how I'll put out videos constantly. I'm working around the clock. I just never stop working. My head is like, even as I'm talking to you right now, I'm gonna need to go and pop to Excedrin soon. All I do is just pop pills now. I know Mayumi is probably listening. I hope Mayumi is not listening to this, and because I don't want to email from her. But yeah, guys, I once took so many painkillers that I developed gastritis, and I was sick for months, and I didn't know what it was, and it was because I was living off painkillers. But and it was literally because it's just, guys, that happened to me during the Great Recession. So during the Great Recession, I was working so hard and suffering so much and starving because I was so broke that I was living off painkillers, and and I got very, very sick, and I didn't know what was happening, and I could have damaged my kidneys and my liver, and I was going to the doctor, and no one could figure out what was going on. And I had some jackass doctors telling me that the reason why I'm getting sick is because I need to become a vegetarian. And once I give up the meat, I'm going to get better. And then finally, I went to the pharmacy once and I started talking to the pharmacist. And the pharmacist quickly figured out that it was because I was using painkillers every single day, why I got so sick. So I know I have to be careful with the painkillers, but I've been taking a lot of them recently because I'm not able to sleep as much. My sleep is kind of disturbed. And it's just a hard work because I have to work so much these days. A lot of that work ethic comes from the greatest generation, seeing them in action and being around them. Because, I lived a very hard life. I experienced homelessness. I experienced a lot of ups and downs. My parents were very abusive and not, I mean, guys, the things I passed through in life, I had some really piece of shit parents. I mean, there are much worse parents. There are parents who are much worse than mine in this world. I acknowledge that. Their parents much, much worse than mine, but my parents were pieces of shit. And it left so many scars on me throughout my entire life. I was much better off without my parents. And but the thing is that, I will say this, it lingers. For example, there's the psychological damage. So I deal with a lot of psychological damage, like a lot of Gen Xers do. Some of them don't admit to it. Some of them are at a point where they just think, they're like, ah, ha ha ha, everything is funny. I'll tell you what's interesting about a lot of Gen Xers. They don't realize how fucked up they are. Many know it, but others don't realize it until years later. They start to experience panic attacks, and some of them won't ever admit to it. They won't admit to it until the end of their lives. But they start to get things like panic attacks. They begin to develop things like sadness, depression. They start to drink, which is a form of self-medication, and they will not admit to it that, a lot of the things that happened during their childhood that they laugh about, that stuff is affecting them. Like Bill Burr, you know, he didn't know what was happening to him. He started just like freaking out one day and thought he was gonna die. And then he started to realize, oh, it's all that stuff from my childhood coming back. And by the time this happened, he was like, I don't know, almost 50 or around 50 years old. And a lot of these, and that's it, it comes back to almost every Gen Xer or Gen Xer, older millennials, people born during that Gen X era. It comes back and it haunts you in different ways. It torments you in different ways because the boomers were very abusive people. They were psychologically manipulative. They were they were very bad apples that's a nice way of describing them. They were not good people. They were not healthy people. They were not people that you could trust. They were not really people that you should even be around. They were people that took advantage of their children. They were people that took advantage of society. They were very, very narcissistic. They were very, very greedy. They were very, very unfair. And they are the first group of people to also let you know that they don't care. Okay. While Gen X is like, we don't care about anything. We don't care about your feelings. Oh, the boomers don't care about, not only do they not care about your feelings, they don't care about you as a person. They don't care about society. They don't care about, the only thing the boomers care about are the boomers and enjoying themselves as much as possible in the moment. That's how the boomers roll.
However, because it became difficult to get a job, millennials missed out on the subsequent rebound. During the recession, the national unemployment rate rose to 10.6%, with millennials experiencing substantially higher rates. In fact, the working-age millennial unemployment rate was 15.8% in 2017 and did not revert to the overall unemployment rate until mid-2018. Remember,
15%, guys, the unemployment rate for millennials was 15% in 2018. 15%. Guys, that is 10 years or more than 10 years after the Great Recession. So millennials experienced an unemployment rate of at least 15% for over 10 years. Jesus help us. Jesus help us. And the baby boomers are saying that the millennials are doing wonderful and they're making more money than their parents did when they were that age. They're saying that Gen Z is the luckiest generation in history and they're buying homes faster than their parents' generation. Guys, all of the news, everything that's coming out right now in the media is just all propaganda.
the unemployment rate includes both people who have jobs and those who are looking for them. Working part-time, underemployed, or in a job outside of one's specialty counts as employment. Looking deeper into the unemployment figures reveals that the recession severely hammered millennials. Worryingly, the labor force participation rate for young 20-somethings has fallen since the Great Recession. Millennials continue to struggle to find their place in the workforce. Looking deeper into employment statistics shows some surprising information regarding the post-2008 job market. From 2008 to 2010, over 60% of employment losses were in the mid-income range of $27,000 to $40,000 per year. The job market has been greatly harmed when once mid-level positions thrived. There is widespread concern about technology replacing low-skilled jobs. These are the jobs and tasks that young workers require to start getting valuable experience. Because technology replaced around 90% of these mid-level jobs, millennials were responsible for 2/3 of employment loss and jobless recovery. As corporations replace routine functions with technology, older, more experienced workers have been pushed down the career ladder. Firms are now looking for experienced staff who can manage non-routine activities more effectively. This trend will have long-term consequences for millennials, forcing them to accept low-wage positions. To ascend the corporate ladder, millennials will need to perform contract and temp work for years longer than any preceding generation. The issues predate the birth of the baby boomers. Following World War II, the economy was expected to cool. There was a lot of money invested in the war effort and rebuilding, which wasn't sustainable. Following World War II, the United States experienced a golden age as it supplied and rebuilt the rest of the world. One can argue that this is not new growth. You can pay for somebody to dig a hole and to fill it back up, and it will be recognized as growth, even if you are no better off. Not to mention the massive giveaways provided by the GI Bill, which positioned a white, post-war generation for easy success. The fall of communism, which resulted in a surge of freer trade, was another worldwide impact that aided boomers. Furthermore, baby boomers profited from a huge labor force. A large workforce means more individuals earning and spending money, which has a cumulative influence on growth. All of these effects would fade, and it would be obvious that a generation of Americans had not learned how to save and invest. The failure of boomers to understand the new economy post-World War II and post-Soviet Union led them to repeatedly double down on disastrous policies. These policies distorted the economy rather than preparing it for long-term inclusive success. Capital investment has historically been linked to labor productivity. Investing in technology and equipment has been a supplement to labor rather than a replacement. Policy decisions made by the baby boomers made it more profitable to engineer riches financially rather than invest in capital and labor that grows the economy as a whole. Since the 1980s, boomers have regularly voted for leaders and policies that benefit the present at the expense of the future. In the 1980s, supply-side measures reduced taxes dramatically, lowering the top tax rate from 70% to 39%. Importantly, these measures cut taxes to encourage fixed capital investment, specifically financial capital, rather than the type of capital that would have enhanced productivity. While tax cuts in the 1980s resulted in small productivity increases, they also encouraged wild financial engineering while ballooning the deficit budget. Tax breaks and a low interest rate environment fueled a boom in financial engineering that began in the 1980s. Financial engineering occurs when a corporation or investor borrows at a low interest rate against assets in order to acquire another company or repurchase stock on its own. Interest payments are now tax deductible, while capital gains on asset sales are taxed at significantly reduced rates. Under these conditions, it was far more profitable and easier for a CEO to borrow money and buy firm shares or another company in order to improve shareholder value. By boosting asset values without requiring real capital investment, these policies stimulated the incorrect type of investment. Economic growth will stall without investments in fixed capital assets that boost labor productivity. Entitlements are unjust to millennials, since there is no mechanism in place to prohibit the elderly from collecting more than they contributed to the system. Social Security and Medicare pay out $1,053,000 to couples born in 1950 after paying $701,000, resulting in a $352,000 deficit. Benefits of $1,373,000 and taxes of $851,000 result in a $521,000 deficit for couples born in 1965. Social Security and Medicare deficits are growing as individuals live longer and in poorer health. The economic disparity is already causing problems for millennials and future generations. It is no news that millennials are delaying marriage, buying a home, and starting families. Future generations may delay starting a family even longer or never start one. It is already a serious problem in industrialized economies such as Germany and Japan, which are dealing with increasing aging populations and enormous social welfare responsibilities. Young employees in Japan have such gloomy prospects that many are unable to imagine having a family.
You see, guys, baby boomers orchestrated all of this. They created this entire system that would leave us demoralized and with major disparities. But the irony is that many of them are becoming homeless right now, and their excuse for it is literally, no one ever told us to save for retirement. Their parents told them not to depend on Social Security. So but yet they didn't figure, well, if we're not supposed to depend on Social Security, we're supposed to save. This is how horrible these people are. So look at this. Look at this stupid article. Unconscionable. This is, yeah. Baby boomers are becoming homeless at a rate not seen since the Great Depression. Here's what's driving this terrible trend. So the nastiest, meanest, most narcissistic group of individuals who kept all the toys for themselves are now all going broke. Half of the baby boomers have zero savings at all. So this article was published on September 22nd, 2023. Many baby boomers across the country are now coming to terms with the hard reality that working for your entire adult life is no longer enough to guarantee you'll have a roof over your head in your later years. Thanks in part to a series of recessions, high housing costs, and a shortage of affordable housing, older adults are now the fastest growing segment of America's homeless population, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal, based on data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The fact that we are seeing elderly homeless is something that we have not seen since the Great Depression. University of Pennsylvania social policy professor Dennis Culhane told Wall Street Journal. Here's what has triggered what some experts are calling a silver tsunami and what they say needs to change to reverse the tide. Baby boomers are increasingly becoming homeless. Dr. Margaret Cushell, a professor of medicine and director of the Center for Vulnerable Populations and Benioff Homeless and Housing Initiative at the University of California, San Francisco, studies homelessness through a lens of its health impacts. And Cushell's research shows there's an escalating rate of homelessness among older Americans. In a 2020 journal article for the American Society on Aging, Cushell wrote that of all the homeless single adults in the early 1990s, 11% were aged 50 and older. By 2003, she says that that percentage grew to 37%. Very, very interesting. All right. So now we're at 37%. And now it says that now the over 50 demographic represents half of the homeless single adults in the US, with no sign of their numbers slowing, leaving baby boomers, those aged 57 to 75, particularly vulnerable. Elderly homelessness has been rare within the contemporary homeless problem. We've always had very few people over 60 who've been homeless historically. Culhane from the University of Pennsylvania told PBS Hour. But in recent years, Culhane says that has changed. Older Americans, he says, are now arguably the fastest rising group. So here's what's changed. After living through multiple recessions, leaving them with little savings, they never saved for retirement in the first place. Aging boomers are also now contending with insufficient affordable housing. They're the ones who are charging insane prices for their property that they kept on refinancing for decades. Low-cost assisted living centers are extremely limited, with labor shortages, inflation, and reduced funding putting facilities at risk of closing. And even rent is becoming increasingly out of reach in certain areas like Massachusetts, New York, and Florida. During the COVID-19 situation, Florida resident Judy Schroeder told Wall Street Journal the apartment building she was living in was sold to a new owner, raising her monthly rent by more than $500. Schroeder lost her part-time job, leaving her living off Social Security alone and couch surfing for months before she finally found a place in late August. I never thought at 71 years old that I would be in this position, she said. You know, I will tell you this though. One area where I will say that millennials are fortunate is the fact that they've been told long in advance there will be no social security for you. All right. There's nothing for you out there. So those that survive, and I say survive, will basically have to grind and work very hard to ensure that they can provide for themselves into the future because they know that no one is coming to rescue them. No one is going to provide for them. At least Gen X knows this. There are a lot of millennials who seem to think that, there's a universal basic income coming. People who take the universal basic income and try to live off that, if and when it does arrive, are going to find themselves in a world of sadness and pain because that is only going to leave a lot of people believing that they can survive this way when they absolutely cannot. Okay? Believing that they can live off this type of thing, they can live off government handouts, and that's going to take care of them. It's a very, very bad way of thinking. It's a very, very bad way of living. And you have to wake up and realize that. Okay? You have to wake up and you absolutely have to wake up and realize that it's really crazy. It's really, really crazy. And again, there are many people who think that they can live this life and get away with it. And life is hard. Life is absolutely hard. Life is very, very difficult. And people need to understand that life is difficult and life is never going to be easy for you. Life is never going to be easy for anyone. Okay? It's a sad truth. It's a sad truth, but it's a real truth, okay? That you have to understand, you have to wake up to. And the boomers, they guys, they had it good. They had it very, very good. And they threw it all away. They squandered everything that their parents left behind for them. Their parents left them so much, okay? Their parents left them a treasure trove, an absolute treasure trove. And what did they do with it? What did the boomers do with it, guys? The boomers squandered it. Because there's a saying: if you when those who are born into this world rich will leave this world poor, and those who are born into the world poor will leave the world rich. And the boomers are an absolute perfect example of this. Okay? They were born into the world rich, and many of them will now leave the world poor because of the very poor decisions that they've made. And boy, oh boy, did the boomers make a lot of poor decisions. They made a lot of poor decisions, and they are still blaming everyone else for for these poor decisions, including their poor children. Okay? Because if you were to listen to the boomers, everything going to hell around us, everything going to hell would be the fault of every other generation other than them. Okay? I've literally, guys, it was one big party for them. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Good times and good vibes, man. That's the boomers. You know, guys, I have an aunt that's going to be 80 years old soon. And I would call her when in her 70s, and she would be in the streets. Sometimes I would marvel at this phenomenon. For example, you know, I can call her at midnight, and I'm thinking, and she doesn't pick up her phone, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be calling her this late. And she'll call me back at 1, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, did I wake you? She knows. She goes, oh no, I wasn't here. And I'm saying, what the hell do you mean you weren't here? Oh, I was out having fun. Where were you? You know, it's just out, you know, enjoying myself, having a little bit of, you know, partying a little bit, partying in the oh god, oh my god, everything had to be about luxury for the boomers. Y'all remember a few years ago when the boomers started to get really pissed off because they said the millennials were killing the killing napkins, killing the napkin industry. They were using paper towel instead of napkins. Or they're not, or oh, the millennials aren't golfing, the millennials aren't playing golf, they're killing the sport of golf. Guys, these people are psychos, psychotic. They were absolutely psychotic, y'all. It is no wonder that so many people just basically called it quits with them and walked away because they drove everyone crazy. They have driven this generation of people have absolutely driven everyone crazy. Everyone crazy. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And they're still doing it. They're still creating problems. They're still making the lives of everyone around us, everyone around them just miserable because of their bad decisions. You know? Very, very bad decisions. And they're just guys like Gen Z, they're desperate for money. The center of their lives is consumerism. Just and you know, for Gen Z, the center of their lives is money. The center of their lives is 100% money. It's all about money. All right? Money, money. Give me the money. I want the money right now. Give it to me right now. That's how Gen Z looks. And Gen Z doesn't give a damn. They don't care how anyone sees them because again, all they want is money. They don't, guys, and when everything goes to hell, they'll be out in the streets tearing down society. Because that's who they are. That's who these people are. It'll never really change with them. It will never ever really change with them. They will always behave this way. They will always act this way. And the reason why is because no one's calling them on it. No one's basically saying, you know what? We're not going to put up with your crap. The boomers have no empathy. They expect from others what they do. They expect from their children what they could never achieve themselves. And they'll turn around and say, well, you went to university, so you should be able to do these things. Guys, it's a level of psychotic narcissism. Okay? Psychotic narcissism. Absolute narcissism. These people lack empathy. They lack self-control. They indulged in everything, guys. All right? George Carlin said it. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. All right? They took it all. They did it for 50 to 60 years, and now they're staring down the barrel staring down the barrel of of their maker. All right, got to go meet that maker soon, and they're like, we're still here. We're not going in. We're here, and we're not going anywhere. uh, they refuse to go and have that chat with Jesus. All right, about everything that they've done to society and the world around them, because they're all afraid. You have to understand this. Most of the boomers, not all of them, but many of them are afraid of passing away. They're scared to death of it. All right, because they live such bad lives that really, what do some of them are really are really happy, and they're like, I lived a great life. I don't give a damn about anyone or anything else. I got what I wanted. It was all me. It was all me, all me, all me, and I'm happy. I don't care. And Jesus is king, and it doesn't matter really what you do down here, because as long as you believe in him, you get eternal salvation. At least that's how I hope it works. That's the boomers. That's the boomers for you guys. That's how they think. That's how they operate, and they're never going to change. They're never ever going to change. Guys, you have to understand, this is how they've always been since they were very young, since they were in their teens and their 20s. That's how they were. That's how they thought mentally. Okay? That's how they were psychologically. That's how they've always been. They've always been about me, 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 me. All the toys belong to me. All the toys are mine. Okay? That's how they are. And they're not going to change. They're not going to reverse their bad ways. They're not going to repent. They're just going to double down. That's what they have inside of them. That's the miserable way that they've lived their lives, and that's the way that they will continue to live their lives. They are never going to look and say, "Hey, you know what? I contributed to this problem. What can we do to help? How can we fix this?" Nope. It's literally about swiping as much as they can, as much of whatever is left over. You know, they've already, like I said, they clean the meat off the bone, and now they're coming back for the bone, man. They're coming back for the bone. They want the bone. Okay? They need to ground that up. They need to ground that up, man. They're like, because they clean the meat off the bone, they suck the marrow from the bone, and now they want the bone. Okay? Now they want the damn bone. This is the reality. That's why they're ending up homeless. That's why they're ending up in the streets. And then I told you, unquestionable. Like, how terrible is this? What was the word that this woman used? Unconscionable. Yeah, there you go. Unconscionable. I mean, the boomers control 80% of the stock market. They control the vast majority of all wealth. Uh, they control the majority of all wealth in Western society in the United States. Okay? And they're ending up homeless, and they want people to come and feel sorry for them. And it just doesn't work like that. Like, they chose that life for themselves. They squandered everything. They squandered everything, and now they want someone to come and rescue them. And I don't think that anyone should really be concerned about this. Baby boomer homeless situation, and how it may get worse for younger generations in the future. I mean, people are calling it out. People are calling out what's happening. We have more and more boomers that are just sleeping on the streets, aging into homelessness. More baby boomers are living on the streets or at risk. I mean, boomers, you did this. You could care less. When I was homeless, they could care less. My father wanted me to pass away out there. All right. When I was during the Great Recession, I couldn't buy food. My father could care less. Okay. And guys, these people. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. These people. God help us. Something else.
The face of homelessness is changing. New research shows the number of people 65 and older experiencing homelessness will triple by 2030.
And Keitha Nelson is on your side tonight, digging deeper into what experts call the crisis of age. Homelessness is a scary situation for anyone to even imagine. This age group, 55 plus baby boomers, they have additional concerns. Some have health or mobility problems emergency shelters are not equipped to handle. And they occupy two of the riskiest categories for heat-related illness, being older and unhoused. But an expert in the field tells me there is hope and this problem can be solved. We took our cameras inside of Jim Paris's car. For 2.5 years, he called this space home.
You know, I'm glad I have the car, but every time I get in it, it brings me back there. And it's not good.
From the outside looking in, homelessness for many of us seems like a them problem, like it could never happen to us.
I used to see homeless people and I would think, good God, you know, I could never be there, but you know, it wouldn't take much to make it happen. And then it happened.
Paris was a part of a group quickly becoming the largest portion of our nation's homeless population. He's a baby boomer.
The largest group remains those who are 18 to 45, but the fastest growing percentage population is 55 and older.
And Dawn Gilman says it's moving into 65 and older. She runs Changing Homelessness. A recent survey of the homeless population in Duval, Nassau, and Clay counties shows the number of people 55 and older increased by 6% in just 6 months.
I went from owning my own company for 7 years. I worked on access control.
Life, he says, led to other jobs, not making quite enough to get by.
I didn't have enough money to put a down payment on an apartment or anything, and I resorted to living on the streets.
Paris moved into his own apartment about 6 months ago with the help of Changing Homelessness. They partner with about 40 agencies here on the First Coast that help the homeless population. We have some helpful resources listed right now in this story on firstcoastnews.com and, of course, the First Coast News app. In the Information Center, I'm Keitha Nelson, First Coast News.
I'm not crying for them. I'm not crying for them, y'all. Y'all need to stop crying for them. All right? These people had the best economy and they threw it all away.
The landscape of retirement is shifting beneath the feet of the baby boomer generation. With almost 75 million boomers across the United States nearing retirement age by 2030, it's shocking that nearly half of them have no retirement savings. To make matters worse, they're becoming the fastest growing generation facing homelessness. What went wrong, and how did their dream of relaxing golden years crumble so tragically? After decades of hard work, many boomers imagined their retirement as sipping margaritas on the coast or cruising down the Miami freeway. But the financial reality paints a different picture. One where the traditional 3 sources of retirement income, Social Security, pensions, and personal savings have all but faltered. Let's delve into how this has impacted baby boomers' financial security. The first source is personal savings. In an ideal world, after working for 4 or 5 decades, retirees should have a decent nest egg to withdraw from once they stop working. But that's not the case. Astonishingly, between 45 to 50% of baby boomers don't have any retirement savings at all, and of those who do, less than 30% have less than $100,000 saved. This amount seems substantial until you consider that the average retiree aged over 65 spends about $53,000 annually. With rising...
So guys, check that out. So half of all boomers have no retirement savings, and then from the ones that do, less than half have $100,000 of savings. All right, less than half have $100,000 worth of savings. Think about that. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Less than 30% of them. So these people are broke, guys. There's no way that they're going to make it into retirement unless the government comes out with some kind of universal, not even basic income. Even with a universal basic income, that's only an extra $1,000 a month. Millennials, though, they can't survive on an extra $1,000 a month. Okay, unless you're a man walking away from society where you basically minimize your expenses, say you're not having children, you're not going to be in a relate, you're not having children, you're not dating, at least not in Western society. You minimize your expenses. You basically get a piece of land and put a shed on it, or you're living with family or something, you basically, or whatever, unless you go down this road, it's gonna be you're screwed unless you're cutting back on everything. You have baby boomers who don't want to use there was a video I played for you guys not too long ago. You had a baby boomer who did not want to apply for food stamps because she didn't want the shame and stigma that comes with it. Food stamps, guys. Do you know how many people are proud to go and grab food stamps right now? You know how many men, men, if you're listening right now, some of y'all are still too proud. All right. You know how many men with money right now, you know how many millionaires would love to have that EBT card right now? That EBT card. Get out of here. Get out of here, y'all. Okay? And boomers are too proud to go and use EBT. Too proud to go and use EBT. Get the heck out of here. So a lot of them are secretly starving. Guys, these people, these people live the best lives. They felt like they were living like the Jeffersons. Moving on up to the east side. Not anymore, buddy. All right, not anymore. I'm going. How does it go in? Like going down. There's a song about going down. All right, like they're going down, down, down. All right, and I'm going up. All right, they were born rich, and now they're going to leave. They're going to leave this reality poor because of their poor decisions and bad choices. All right, they made some very bad choices, and they were some very bad apples. And now it's going to catch up on them. Now it's absolutely catching up on them, and they're going to have to live with it and deal with it. They're really, really going to have to deal with it. They made these choices, and they're going to have to wake up to the reality and the consequences of the choices and the decisions that they made. I'm not crying for the baby boomers, and neither should you. Neither should you. None of us should cry for them. They chose that life, okay? They weren't crying for us.
And basic living costs, that savings pool drains rapidly. In fact, many boomers are exhausting their savings faster than they ever imagined, which has resulted in the troubling statistic that they are the fastest growing generation becoming homeless. In the 1990s, just over 10% of the homeless population was over 50. Today, it's almost 1 in 2. A lifetime of diligent work isn't enough to guarantee a stable future. The second source is Social Security. This was designed as a safety net, created in response to the Great Depression to help older Americans who had sunk into poverty despite their years of hard work. Funded by a payroll tax, the idea was that those working now would be supported by future generations in their retirement. However, in the 1980s, the government began using the Social Security Trust Fund for other expenses, leaving IOU notes instead of real dollars. With the massive boomer generation now retiring, the fund is expected to be depleted.
Guys, did I not tell you that the money in the Federal Reserve is no money? All right. If you break into the Federal Reserve, the only thing you're going to find in there are IOUs. Guys, they replaced the value of the dollar with IOU notes. All right. IOUs. These people kept on kicking the can down the road and thinking and saying that they were just going to have other generations pay for it. They came up with these crazy tax schemes where they didn't have to worry about paying for billions and billions of dollars and trillions of dollars in debt because they were going to use this accounting principle that allows them to resolve that at another point in the decade. In other words, they created new banking rules that allow them to shift debt and debt and liabilities to another generation, saying that this would immediately become due in like 2050. So, they're based on the way that the economy is growing and all of these things, money will clearly be there in 2050 to pay $2 trillion. So the people at that point will just simply take care of the bill. They actually did this stuff, guys. They actually did this stuff, and they want me to shut up. The baby boomers don't want me to speak. They don't want me to tell you what they've done. All right? They stole our futures.
34, which would result in retirees receiving about 75% of their promised benefits. If you're expecting a $1,000 monthly check, imagine only receiving $750. With rising prices, this 25% cut could be devastating. This shortfall is exacerbated by economic uncertainties, with recent projections showing a $10 to $15 trillion gap between what's been promised and what's available. Lastly, there are retirement plans through employers. Pension plans were once the cornerstone of private retirement, guaranteeing a payout after years of loyal service. But in the 1980s, they were largely replaced by 401k or superannuation plans, which shifted the responsibility of retirement saving to employees. These plans put the onus on workers to set aside funds and navigate their investments themselves. Initially, market booms made them seem attractive, but market volatility struck hard in the early 2000s, wiping out fortunes. Coupled with high fees and often lackluster returns, 401k plans have failed many boomers. The average balance dropped almost 25% in the third quarter of 2023 alone. Even more concerning is healthcare. A 65-year-old couple retiring now will need to spend nearly $300,000 on medical expenses alone, with long-term care, like assisted living or nursing homes, costing upwards of $8,000 per month. The problem? Medicare doesn't cover long-term care, and Medicaid requires retirees to be below the poverty line to qualify. Many boomers find themselves in a gap where they earn too much for government assistance, but not enough to afford care. Nursing homes themselves are struggling due to staff shortages and financial losses, leading to more than 1,000 closures in the past decade. Some boomers might hope their children can help, but millennials and younger generations face their own challenges with stagnating wages and high costs of living. Many can't afford to care for aging parents and maintain their financial stability simultaneously. Reduced work hours and career shifts often lead to financial hardship for the younger generation. Addressing the growing crisis of homelessness among baby boomers requires comprehensive solutions that combine governmental policy changes, personal financial planning, and community support. So, are there any solutions to help the greatest generation? Here are 3 suggestions to help baby boomers get through and enjoy their retirements. Number 1. Governmental policy changes. First and foremost, the government can consider reforming the Social Security system to ensure its sustainability. This might include adjustments to the payroll taxes, revising benefit formulas, or gradually increasing the retirement age for younger generations, provided these changes are phased in to allow for adequate planning. Additionally, the creation of targeted support programs for older adults struggling with homelessness could provide immediate relief. Programs could offer subsidized housing, emergency healthcare services, and job retraining for those who are still able to work. Reforming Social Security might also involve establishing a minimum benefit for low-wage workers, ensuring they receive sufficient income even if they've had inconsistent earnings throughout their careers. The government could also strengthen existing programs like supplemental security income to aid older adults with limited financial resources. Incentivizing businesses to hire older workers and extending unemployment benefits could further help those who can still work. Number 2 is personal financial planning. On an individual level, baby boomers must take proactive steps toward managing their retirement savings more effectively. This includes consulting with financial advisors who specialize in retirement planning to better understand how to allocate and protect their assets, considering the volatility of markets and their personal longevity. Educational programs aimed at older adults could also be developed to enhance their financial literacy, especially in areas of budgeting, investment risk management, and spotting predatory financial schemes. Personal financial planning should also encompass strategies like diversifying investment portfolios to minimize risk and exploring alternative sources of retirement income, such as annuities or rental properties. Baby boomers should understand their healthcare needs and seek supplemental insurance to cover unexpected medical costs. Additionally, delaying retirement for a few years could significantly increase Social Security benefits, providing more security later in life. The third is community support initiatives. Communities can play a crucial role by fostering programs that support the elderly in maintaining their independence. This might include volunteer-driven initiatives that offer transportation, food delivery, and home maintenance for the elderly who lack family support. Furthermore, local nonprofits could collaborate with healthcare providers to offer affordable medical care services tailored to the needs of retirees, reducing the financial burden of health-related expenses. Communities can expand support by building partnerships with local businesses to provide discounts for retirees or offering free workshops on aging-related topics like estate planning. Senior centers could be empowered to serve as resource hubs, connecting elderly individuals with low-cost legal aid, mental health services, or nutritional programs. Furthermore, intergenerational programs could match retirees with younger volunteers for companionship and support, creating a more inclusive community safety net. Implementing these solutions requires cooperation between policymakers, private organizations, and the community. By addressing both the immediate needs for support and the underlying issues causing financial instability for baby boomers, these strategies could significantly mitigate the risk of homelessness for this vulnerable segment of the population. The baby boomer generation is facing a multifaceted crisis that threatens their ability to live comfortably in retirement. Savings are dwindling, government safety nets are weakening, and healthcare expenses are skyrocketing. But understanding the challenges is the first step toward adapting to them. We hope this insight helps you stay ahead of these turbulent times.
So, guys, somehow the baby boomers deserve to live comfortable lives. Comfortable lives, y'all. They deserve to live comfortable lives in retirement. Most Gen Xers have really accepted that they're never going to be able to retire, and they're expecting to be hauled off to the glue factory. And the boomers deserve comfortable lives. All right, guys, half of all people right now in the U.S., like homeless people, are now 50 and older. And previously, during the silent generation era and even the greatest generation, when they got old, homelessness was very, very rare. They only made up 10% of the homeless population. So the 1990s, only 10% of the homeless population were old people, people above 50. Being 50 years old and homeless was considered old back then. 50 was considered, back in those days, 50 was considered an old man. Guess what, guys? 50 years old, bro. You just started your life right now. A lot of people are just starting life at 50. Okay? It's not a game. It's really not a game. And now half of the homeless population are 50 and older, and the baby boomers they're the fastest growing segment of homeless. And let me bet. Oh, it's because of those darn kids. They gave everything to their kids. They spoiled their kids rotten. They gave their kids everything, and they left nothing for themselves. You're gonna hear crap like that coming out of the mouths of the boomers. They did it all for their kids, and now they have nothing. And those kids, these good-for-nothing kids, don't want to. These good-for-nothing kids don't want to step up and take care of their parents. But you know what's great about this? Because the boomers screwed their kids so much over, because the boomers pillage society right now, even if their kids wanted to help them, many of their kids cannot help them. Many of their kids don't have a place for them, okay? And they can't add another person to their lease. All right, so they're basically screwed. It's a massively hard situation. Guys, people get old. And that's one thing that's going to be happening to a lot of Gen X women right now. All right, there's a lot of Gen X women who are still fronting, putting on a show like they're tough, big, and bad. Many of them, guys, are heading into their 50s over the next 10 years or 60, because the first of Gen X will turn 60 in a couple of months. 2025. Okay, the first of the Gen Xers turned 60, and a lot of them are heading towards homeless. And guess what, guys? They'll be out there in the streets making videos. All right, you have a lot of these Gen X women making videos TikTok's probably going to be banned eventually. They'll put it on YouTube or Instagram, and they can go be a baddie on Instagram, homeless baddie on Instagram. All right, covered in muck. Okay. These people chose to do bad, and now the bad that they chose to do is following them and is leading to a life of desperation and destitution. We learned growing up as those who were raised during the Gen X era that life is hard. Our parents were our first bullies. All right, and that's not an understatement. They were not only our first bullies, they were worse than the bullies at school. These are not good people. These are very, very bad people. These are very, very bad apples. All right. And that now most of them are ending up homeless and they don't know what to do. And guess what? For many Gen Xers tasted homelessness at some point in their lives. That's why Gen X is the most resourceful generation. Y'all think it's a game, but when hard things come, you're going to want a Gen Xer. I'm telling you guys, when hard times arrive and you do not know what to do, there's a thing about Gen X, people born during the Gen X era. There's a certain type of resilience, and it's like you basically either guys, there's a reason why I'm still here. There's a reason that I was able to survive homelessness. There's a reason why I was able to survive illness, an illness that would have wiped other people out over, much, much faster. All right. That's guys, there's something inside of me. It's something inside of all of us as Gen Xers, people born during that Gen X period where you just keep on pushing and fighting no matter how horrible the boomers were, no matter how horrible the world is. You just kept on pushing and fighting. I mean, and maybe we won't be here forever, but we are the ones who survived. And there's a saying that, like, be very wary, be very careful around old men, who are still around in fields where young men where men pass away young. Be very careful in a world, in an era where you're dealing with people who are still around that grew up in an era where men passed away young, where people passed away young, men and women passed away young. We're the ones who survived. I have so many friends, family, neighbors who are Gen Xers. They are no longer with us. They are no longer with us. And when I say they are no longer with us, I mean some of them passed away in the recent years, but most of them passed away when we were growing up. I talked about just how much that movie My Girl messed me up, where Macaulay Culkin's character died, and a lot of the Gen Xers in the comments don't give a damn, and they're like, "That was nothing, all right. I didn't feel anything." Y'all, that movie broke me so bad. That movie messed me up so much psychologically. All right. I really loved that movie. And then when he passed away, it left a scar on me. It left an emotional scar on me. And you've got Gen Xers in the comments like, man, it was not even so bad. And maybe if he was more careful, he wouldn't have went. Bro, Gen X, there, guys, death and death was it was such a normal part of Gen X's era. They would just like, it was literally about wearing t-shirts like, yeah, the Grateful Dead and stuff like that. Death was just a normal part of life for Gen X. I mean, if you made it, you made it. If you didn't, well, I hope you enjoyed it while you were still here. That's life. Guys, these people, Gen X used to get drunk. They would be in the woods getting drunk. They would be in the graveyards getting drunk. They would be in the graveyards getting laid. This is, guys, Gen X. Oh my God! If people want to mess with these people, I'm telling you, Gen X grew up so hard. And everyone's like, "Oh, Gen X goes around acting like they're so tough, like they're so tough." I'm telling you, Gen Z, younger millennials, they don't know what Gen X went through. That's why when you have some of the older millennials, you have the Zennials talking, giving you Gen X stories. You know, I'm they tell you, like, don't mess with these people. You've got Gen Xers telling you, coming online and warning Gen Zers, like, they see what they know what's going on. They're like, listen, the older millennials told you, don't mess with us. The Zennials told you, don't mess with us, and you're still messing around with us. Okay, you have women in their 50s. You've got white girls in their 50s letting you know that they will fuck you up, and you're still and Gen Z guys. But it's kind of quieted down. It started to quiet down a little bit. Y'all notice that Gen Z? I mean, I'm sure they'll start acting up again. Y'all notice that Gen Z is starting to kind of quiet down a little bit, messing with Gen X. Like, they're starting to quiet down a little bit. Like, because I was seeing like video upon video after video of Gen Zers talking shit, and now they're starting to quiet down a little bit. I wonder what happened. I saw some comments from Gen Xers like, we'll just take their allowance away. We'll just take their allowance away and turn the Wi-Fi off. Bro, can you imagine? Can you imagine? Can you imagine some Gen Xers saw they're good for nothing? Gen Z kids talking shit online, run their mouths about Gen X, and they're like, all right, kid, no allowance and no Wi-Fi. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm 25 years old. You can't take my allowance away. You can't take my Wi-Fi away. And they're like, what are you going to do about it, huh? And it's not like you're working. It's not like you're going to work. Oh, buddy, you're just staying in your room all day, playing video games and jerking off. All right? No more porn for you, all right? You're going to no TV, no Wi-Fi, no video games, no Wi-Fi, all right? You're not going to be able to play online. No multiplayer for you, all right? No Fortnite, no Call of Duty multiplayer. All right, you're screwed. Okay, and we're taking away your pocket money. All right, so now you can't go buy your weed and you can't go buy your alcohol or your snacks. Okay, you're fucked. And we only have healthy food downstairs. I'm only gonna buy healthy food, so you're not even gonna want to eat that shit. All right, so you're gonna be starving, bro. You're gonna be starving, little bro, because you were running your stupid little mouth. So therefore, it looks like some of these kids are getting disciplined. It looks like some of these kids are getting disciplined. All right, and finding out why you don't mess with X, and that's basically that's even on the lighter side. That's 100% on the lighter side. And guys, just to remind you, we have our own space. It's a wonderful little space called the Angry Guy Clubhouse. You can go over there, check it out, subscribe to the clubhouse, join the clubhouse. It's absolutely lit. It is our space where we can talk. We have extended videos, we have guides, we have podcasts, we have articles. I publish new articles every single day. The most recent article at the time of making this video is, Did Feminism Fail Women? The Unexpected Backlash and Blame Game. We have courses like, we have guides like The Blueprint for Escaping the Rat Race, The Dark Ages May or May Not Have Been Orchestrated, The Boomer Apocalypse, How One Generation Sold Us Out. There's a lot of good stuff over there. There's a lot of good stuff. We've got some Gen X stuff, The Silent Rage of Gen X, Forged in the Fires of Reality. Even we have motivational stuff like From Radio Waves to Motivational Waves, the Les Brown story. We also have some really interesting, like, unrelated things that I never think, because this is the manosphere. Thanos' blunder, why a population cap would have saved the universe. Guys, we've got something for everyone, all right? We've got something for everyone. If you want to even hear more about how the baby boomers are ending up homeless and how they destroyed society, we've got more videos on that. We've got this video, Millions of Boomers Are Ending Up Homeless. You can jump in and check that out. That is an exclusive to the Angry Guy Clubhouse. 99% of everything on here is free. So you can jump on. You can jump on here and just, go enjoy yourself, man. Go enjoy yourself, man. Come on, bro. Go enjoy yourself, all right? Yeah, man. All right. So go and check that out. There's a link to it in the description of the video. Oh, and also, guys, we are also offering what we call the digital nomad blueprint. You get a free copy of our digital nomad blueprint when you subscribe to the clubhouse. And again, it's free to subscribe, and 99% of everything on the clubhouse is free. Go and check it out. Link in the description. You also see something on the screen that should take you there. And the digital nomad blueprint actually comes right in your inbox. So once you subscribe, it'll come right to you in the welcome email. It's at the top of the email. Some of you are like, where was it? Where's the where? It's right in the email. It's right in the welcome email. It'll be right at the top of the email, and you can download it and begin getting some ideas for getting the hell out of the Dodge, because things are not going well. But yeah, guys, what do you think regarding all of this? Most baby boomers are now ending up homeless. I don't feel bad for these bad apples. Let me know your thoughts. We'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWM and walking away. And cheers.